Tonight, as requested, we're going to talk about some ways to simplify your bookkeeping. And, I think that, we'll just dive right in. I think that a lot of people, when they think about bookkeeping, they think it's something they do for their taxes, right? Most of the people I talk to, that's their focus. We're going to get this done for our taxes. Which I find fairly uninspiring, and I bet you do too, because it's kind of hard to get excited about preparing your own bill so you can pay the government. You know, and it's, I thought I might get agreement on that. You know, and it's not, that's one use of what we do bookkeeping for, but it's not the best use. It's not the fun use. It's not the use that I love and that, and that feels good. When bookkeeping is done well, the thing is that it can turn out these reports that give you information and take care of a lot of your other problems. The problems like you're in business for yourself, you're not really sure how one decision should be made or what your next step should be. You're trying to accomplish your goals, but, sometimes you don't know where you're at. And, bookkeeping, it's a huge part of the answer to many of the issues that we have just in running our business. Not the bookkeeping itself, but the reports it turns out. I was thinking about when I was putting this together, a few of the things that more recently I've been able to use the bookkeeping to help my clients with. For instance, I had a client, she's in a service industry. She felt like she was desperate for money. She felt like she wasn't making enough. And so she was taking like every client that was coming her way. And some of them were not best for her. They were not optimal clients. They were awful clients. So we sat down and we looked at her financials and got a real picture of where she was at, and she realized she was doing well. And she could confidently raise her rates to weed out less optimal clients. She could let some of them go. She just wasn't in desperate straits. So that was pretty rewarding. Another one I did, I had a therapist who, she's in private practice all by herself. And she needed to figure out how she could get control of her time. And people don't really think of bookkeeping as helping you do that, but by looking at her books, looking at what her expenses were and how much she made on average, we were able to see how many appointments she needed and go in. And we ended up getting her work week into 3 days so she could spend 2 days with her grandchildren. So, that's the really fun and inspiring thing that can happen when you have your information up to date. It's accurate. You can run reports to let you know how things are going. My other bragging point just recently saved my client 20% on his merchant services fees, because we took a look at the things and I said, wow, you spend too much. So we need to change his merchant services fees. So there's all kinds of things you can do with your bookkeeping that actually are pretty exciting. The biggest problem I see, though, is that it's the business owner themselves that overcomplicates everything. And generally, they overcomplicate it with things like having bank accounts here, there, and everywhere, too many of them, a stack of credit cards. They're running around not really paying attention to this, so they're throwing money back and forth between these things, using their personal card when they are buying their office supplies. And, whatever, it's this running, it's this overcomplication. It creates all this misery, because then when you sit down to do your books, it's really hard to remember, oh, was that $200 transferred to my savings, or was that what I paid on the credit card? Where did this come from? Do I owe my Amex card some money? It's crazy, and it's actually pretty preventable. The very best thing you can do to have good bookkeeping is you get a good mindset around your money, and from there it will start to fall into place. So We've all heard of keep it simple, silly, right? But I like keep it simple and slow everything down. It doesn't have to take hours and hours to do your books, but at the point that you're doing things, it only takes a second. I have 2 credit cards in my wallet. One's personal, one's business. They're marked with a label,
Mm-hmm.
It only takes a second to make sure I choose the business one. On my Amazon account, both credit cards are there. They're nicknamed business card, personal card. It only takes a second, just slowing down that 1 second to choose the right thing, and all of a sudden, most of the problems end up being worked out. Things are really clear. I've got a checking account, I got a savings account, I got a credit card for the business, an HSA account. That's it. We're not moving from 82 different banks. Sometimes people need 1 or 2 specialty accounts, like maybe a checking for payroll or whatever. That's fine. But I also have people come to me, and it turns out they have, in 4 different banks, they have 5 different checking accounts and 8 different savings accounts and all these different lines of credit and everything. And they're just running money back and forth between it. Don't do that. Just slow things down. The other thing I see people getting involved in a lot lately is 8 different e-payment options. So now they're paying vendors with Zelle one moment. Please don't do that. And then the next thing, they're taking payments over here on PayPal, and they've got the Venmo going and all these things. The complication is huge. It's really difficult for them to reconcile their books. Everything is really troublesome, and I can tell you that it's just so easy to use your personal Zelle, your Venmo. It just makes that whole situation compounded. So in fact, I'm just now talking to a guy who knows more about it than I do, and if you say sell online where you need different options, I believe Stripe allows for that. I have to ask him some more questions. But you need to find a payment gateway where things are coming in and a basic set of accounts. I've been doing it that way for years. It doesn't stop anything. A big thing, big thing, so right number of accounts, don't commingle your funds. Please don't commingle your funds. You're breaching your corporate veil every time you do it, and it's just a mess. You'll have money everywhere, and you're going to miss deductions. You're going to, things are just going to be problematic. I see a lot of people who kind of consider their business, their personal piggy bank, and they're dipping into it. They're going to the ATM to get a little money here and there out of the business. Don't do it. You want to really schedule your money moves. So I have a payday for myself. It doesn't go through payroll because that's not my corporate entity. But the distribution to Lura happens on a particular day. It happens the exact same day. I reconcile my accounts for the month. I've put out my bills. I've checked to see what's there. I've done the allocations, put money into the savings for the business, and then figured out how much Lura gets paid. I've sent all the business bills out, and then I'm paying Lura. All those things happen on one day. That's my payday. The rest of my life, that money that I transferred on my payday that's over my personal account, that's what I use. So if my personal account is low, we're getting towards the end of the month, sure, Laura's going to get a distribution, but we're not going to be spending that money because it's not payday yet. And we schedule the money moves. Just slow it down and keep things simple. Keep it on a system. That's not always an easy habit for people to get into, but it's one of the best I do. If you have money habits daily, weekly, whatever, monthly, you're going to be in better shape. The other thing is, please file as you go. You'll be so much happier. And I love digital filing. I highly recommend. If you're familiar with Dropbox, upgrade. It costs the same amount and has way better security to a product called sync.com. It has encryptation up and it has encryptation down. You can put all your files in there. If you have a receipt, you got to hold on to it because it was for a meeting. You can take a picture of it, put it in your sync in a little file that says receipts. You can get back to it. And if somebody happened to steal your laptop, you can go remotely log in and wipe everything off your laptop, and it will still be out on their servers. It's a wonderful digital filing cabinet, and it has great security. In fact, it's HIPAA compliant, which is how I first got to use it. And just like Dropbox or something like that, it's $10 a month. So I highly recommend that one. The other thing is keep a folder. I just have a folder now. In the old days, we had all these many folders. Oh, there were so many folders, and there were the stacks of the paper and the stacks of the paper. I hated it. I hated it so much. But if you're doing things well, you can have one folder where you just put in the tax. It's a receipt or a bill or anything, you just put it in that folder. It's really rare for me to ever have to go into that folder because I'm organized and I've done my bookkeeping. All the information is in front of me there. I don't need to go look for a receipt. I keep them in a box until 7 years, and then I take them out to the burn pile. If the IRS ever asks, they can have my folder.
How do you spell sync, Laura?
SYNC.com.
Thank you.
You bet. The other thing is, and if you want me to send an invite link, let me know. I can do that. The other thing is automate. You want to do it strategically, but the more you can automate, the more your bookkeeping becomes really nice. My job, being a bookkeeper being any kind of data entry person is going away. Only the people who can think through things are still going to be left in a couple of decades. This is maybe less than that, maybe in a decade. The automation that is being developed right now is incredibly powerful. And when you use it and use it well, you end up having really clean books, not that much work, a lot fewer errors. You have less accounting theory to learn. The strategy is to you set up your computer, you train it to do what you need it to do, and handle all the routine stuff. It can pull the data from your bank now. It can see, if I say, it's Office Max, that's always office supplies, I can tell it that. I never have to look at those again. If it's always sync.com, that's always going to be software. I'm never going to look at those transactions again. That will leave you with just the transactions that require a human brain. So I don't have that many. Mine are all really. There will be a few things that I put on my credit card. There will be oddball purchases that I make, but most of it, if the bank sends my computer a note that says she spent $79 at Brother Toner, my computer knows that's office supplies. Probably at least 75% of the transactions coming into most computers can be automated in some way. There are some businesses that have some special needs. I've worked with people who it's not the best choice for. For instance, I had a blind client who uses Excel well, but it was difficult for that person to learn some other software. And I've known a number of people who've been in business a very long time. They're sort of at the end of their business, they love it, and they've been doing it on paper forever, and they're excellent bookkeepers, and there's no reason for them to change. They've already got all this worked out. But for most of us, you get a right-sized software system, you teach it what to do, and it will take care of most of this for you. So what does right size look like? Bookkeeping software that has bank sync and auto entry rules, they're just the greatest. And that also allows you to put in templates and memorize transactions. So if you have an adjustment that's happening every month, whatever, it can be put in as a memorized transaction, and you can just go in, put the correct numbers for the month in, and hit the enter. Digital filing system, that's where you get to sync. Password management. Doesn't seem like that would be bookkeeping, would it? But if you're using the same password for all of your bank accounts, they only have to steal one, and they're going to be tromping through your finances. So password management is a part of modern bookkeeping. I like LastPass, Dashlane, anything like that. But learn to use something so you can have a different, long, difficult, random password for every one of your accounts. And then some businesses need some specific things. Digital time tracking is incredible. Instead of like logging everything and then having to add it up at the end of the month, you can now have an app on your phone. You log in when you start working with one client or on one task or whatever, and then those can actually be drawn into, you can integrate that with your bookkeeping. It'll pull in the time, and you can say, okay, let's invoice for this, and it will apply all the time and apply the rates. It's wonderful. The other one, digital mileage tracking. There are apps for that now. Who every year absolutely has all their miles written down in that logbook that the IRS? See ya?
Yeah.
I never did. You guys are so great. I used to constantly have to go in and look at my calendar and fill it back out towards the end of the year. I was so bad about it. And then, of course, now everything's online. But then just before I started doing everything online, the digital mileage tracking came along. I was like, oh, my God, this is great. There may be some other things that are specific to your business. But again, I just want to point to that word strategically. Don't go overboard. Keep it simple. Make it just what you need and nothing else. If you want some suggestions for some of this software, let me know. I'm happy to do that. The other thing is delegate strategically. When it comes to being a small business owner who's a do-it-yourself bookkeeper, there are a few places where you can spend your money well with a bookkeeper. Professional setup. Oh, it's so much easier to, if you get set up from the beginning right, you're going to be so much happier. Also, cleanup. If your books have been a mess for a while and they need to be cleaned up, it takes some accounting theory to do that. Hire a bookkeeper to do it. Get you clean and moving forward in a good way. Also, if you need help with best practices or something special that's different about your business, you can hire a bookkeeper to help you work out what that's going to be, what that process is. Anything complex. For years, I had a client that hired me for, it was about 15 minutes a year because the tax accountant would send back the adjusted journal entries, and she said, that just boggles my mind and I don't want to learn it. So I would go in and just put in the adjusted journal entries for the accountant, and she'd pay me, and it was a happy relationship. But that's an example. If you have something complex, probably a bookkeeper can do it up in no time and keep you going forward clean. Another thing to consider is a year-end review. We do some of those where we'll go through and look, and if we see anything out of place, clean that up. It saves you money once you get to the CPA. And when it comes to payroll, just get a payroll company. Payroll's a real mess if you mess it up, and there are good solutions now for payroll companies that are really user-friendly. And the reason I say you want the full-service version of that is because you need to be, payroll has a lot of deadlines. You need to not miss the deadlines, or there are fines and there are fees. And they start this cascade of issues where the state will send you a letter and say, oh, you were late, so here's your fine. But then 2 days later, you get another letter, and it took forever for the first letter to come. Now you find out that's over the 30 days, so they've added interest to the fine, and you send in the check, and they write you back, and you say there was another 26 cents interest. Just avoid that. Just get a full-service payroll company. They will take care of everything, and it's really fast to process payroll. If you do it yourself, I know a couple of good companies that are excellent. Bookkeepers love them. And they will even sync the transactions with your bookkeeping software. So If your business is making about $75,000 or more a year, that's when we generally recommend hire a bookkeeper. Again, if you're a superior bookkeeper and you've got it all worked out, go to it. I love it. But for most, at this point, you're starting to get too busy to mess with this kind of stuff, and you'd be better off getting a bookkeeper because your time's becoming too valuable. But I actually like when the smaller businesses or the younger businesses are doing their own books. I think you learn a lot from that, especially if you work with somebody who can help you get some context around what you're doing. The next step for simplifying your bookkeeping is schedule an appointment with it and keep the appointment. About 15 minutes every morning when you start your day to go through your transactions from the day before and put them in and like pull that receipt out of your purse from when you had the coffee meeting and stick it in your file. You do that and you can remember what it was. You can remember if you transferred money, where you transferred it to. You can remember if there was something odd. And really, 15 minutes a day, and then you stop and you look at your profit and loss, do the comparison one so you can see how much you've grown and go, yes, good job you. Start your day out well. The other thing is set a little time at towards the end of your week or your month or whatever your cycle is. Like schedule your billing time, schedule your reconciliation time. You can see here on this one, here's Lura. She's going to get paid. We're going to pay the EEO bills. We're going to pay Lura. Woo, 10 a.m. That's one of her favorite days. I actually love it. I love getting through the reconciliation so I can look at my financials and go and just check and see, just check my goals. Just did I do it? I've been feeling good about this. And the other thing is use checklists. They don't have to be long. They don't have to be complicated. These are a little simplified just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. Monthly and annual has other things, but just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about, if you have a little checklist and you know every morning you're going to do these few things, or every month you're going to do this set of things, it begins to be like second nature. It becomes so habitual. I mean, I hardly even think about anymore my monthly routine that I've been doing forever and ever. And that really helps to simplify things. And definitely use a checklist at the end of the year to make sure that you don't forget things. It's really easy to forget things like your 1099 deadlines coming up. That's the biggest one everybody forgets. Any sort of annual adjustments you need to make in your books, it's easy to forget those. You only do them once a year. So definitely, if you have no other checklist, get an annual checklist. If you need one, let me know. I have some, and they can be adapted to, be specific to your business. Analyze transactions well. So here's the deal. Analyzing transactions and reconciliations are the two areas where the rubber really meets the road with bookkeeping. If you absolutely never want to do them or cannot get your head around it, you should hire somebody to do this for you. Because if transactions go in badly, data comes out badly, and that can cost you a lot of money. This little chart I put together, I tried to show some of the more common things we see. Like on income, we'll see people take out a loan that goes into the bank and they'll allocate it to income. That's not income, it's a liability. But if you put it in income, you're going to pay taxes on that. It can cost a lot of money depending on the size of the loan. We have payments on loans or credit cards. That's another one that I see. People will put that on to an expense instead of the liability account, so they don't show that the credit card's paid off. They show it as an expense, and that's going to overstate your expenses. another thing that's going to skew your data. It's going to skew your taxes. I just kind of went down here and, and looked at different things. Putting the CPA fee on as cost of services when it's an expense is kind of specific, but a lot of people don't know the difference between what a cost of service is and if they should use that, or if something is an expense. If you don't know, either commit to learning, and there are some lessons. There are some good books. There are some YouTube vids out there. I am hoping to put out some training classes for DIY bookkeeper folks. And that should be coming out in the near future. There are ways to learn this. But again, if you don't want to, can't get your mind around it, or something like that, don't. Hire it out. Because the mess that is created and the expense that gets created when some of these bigger mistakes happen is a lot more than you'll probably spend on a good bookkeeper, actually. So this analyzing transactions, well, is just one of your critical skills. The other very critical skill is being able to reconcile. If you can't reconcile correctly, we have no idea if your books are right, and almost always they are not. It's just kind of impossible not to occasionally have a duplicate entry, or something that it got misallocated. Sometimes you're even starting to type the right word, you get interrupted, and it accidentally, it autofills something different. You definitely need to be able to reconcile every month, and you definitely need to know how to do that. And if you are in software doing that, you definitely want to use their software reconciliation module. You want to learn how to use that, use it correctly, because if you don't, there's a problem. If you don't use a database correctly, then you're not going to get the right answer. So you need to use their software reconciliation module. I see people sometimes just going into, like, say, QuickBooks and going into the ledger, and they just click the things off instead of using that reconciliation module. You won't actually know if you're reconciled. When you get your beginning balance, when you go to reconcile, your beginning balance needs to match your statement. If it doesn't, you need to fix that. Total deposits and expenditures ought to match your statement. All along as you're reconciling, you need to be able to see that what's in your books matches the statement. And this is the big one that most people don't get. If there are straggling transactions you can't account for, you aren't reconciled, and your books are not correct. So if you wrote Joe a check, and it's sort of towards the end of last month, and now you're reconciling, and that check hasn't posted to the bank yet because it's still in Joe's pocket, that's fine. That's fine. You know that that's the difference between what the statement says and what your books say, and it makes sense. You can see that's the check. You can see it was only about 8 days ago, and Joe's always slow getting to the bank. That's fine. However, if you open up your books and you open up your reconciliation module, and there are 8 or 10 transactions, and their dates are 2014 and 2016, or sometime at the beginning of 2019, a couple of them, your data is not correct. Those don't belong in there. You're not reconciled, and we have to fix those. And you should talk to a bookkeeper about doing that because there's a particular way it has to be done. If you don't, we should go back. Again, as I said before, critical skill. If you don't want to do this, don't like to do this, can't get your head around it, hire somebody. I have one client who he does all the daily stuff, and he's accurate, and takes care of his books all year long, and about twice a year, he'll call me and say, okay, go ahead and reconcile the books. I rarely find any mistakes, and I send him back his reports, and then we visit about his financials. It's so fast to have me do that. He pays for a little bit less than an hour of my time because he's tidy. It's really quick to reconcile. So if you don't know how to do this, hire it. It's a lot less expensive than you think. and you'll be happier too. Mind the details on time. These are some things I find people not doing because they figure they will remember when it's time to have this in their books. Guess what? You won't. I don't. Nobody does. Nobody remembers these things. If you accidentally paid with your own money, I've done it, you know, hit the wrong button and realize, oh my God, I just bought that with a personal card. You need to put that in the books immediately. You will not remember at the end of the month. You will not remember at the end of the quarter, and you sure won't remember right before tax time. Just do it. Just go to your books, take care of it. If you just bought a new fixed asset, it seems like it's large and you would notice. No, you'll forget. Just go put it in the books right away. If you have inventory, record your changes on a regular basis. It is a misery to do that at the end of a period because there will always be things like returns and crazy stuff. Just do that regularly. And please make sure you have a W-9 before you pay a new subcontractor because you got to send out a 1099. The other thing I suggest is, you know how we sort of get to 1st of January and we're like, oh, got to send out 1099s at the end of the month? And then we start calling around to see if we can get W-9s. Back that schedule up, put it on your calendar to start doing that October 1st. Because you can call everybody and say, you know, and send them an email and say, hey, you didn't get me your W-9. And you'll be smooth sailing. You'll be like on the 10th of January filing those out the door instead of, I know a lot of people who get around to it sometime in February or March. The other things, non-sufficient funds, if a check bounces on you or you bounce a check or there's some bad debt or something like that, again, you're not going to remember at the end of the year. You won't. And then your bookkeeper will come to you and say, what is this weird transaction? And you'd be like, yeah, I don't know. And you'll spend a couple of days digging through your accounts. Just do it right away. And finally, check your work. So in bookkeeping, if your profit and loss and your balance sheet, your financial statements, if they do not match, if your balance sheet doesn't match what your statements have to say, you need to find out why. If you have negative amounts in accounts that shouldn't have negative amounts, you need to find out why. So after you get done with your month and you feel like, wow, I really got that cleaned up, run your reports and look at them. Because if you see something like this where there's design income that's a negative balance and it's August 15th, that clearly doesn't make sense, right? Like, I hope not. Maybe Craig's paying other people to do their graphs, but whatever. There's a number of things that you can look at on your financials that are going to tell you right away if there's some weird mistake you should go look for. So same as other things. If you look at this right after you just reconciled, it's much easier to fix. In fact, sometimes I'll see a mistake and I'll go, I know exactly what that is. That's that weird transaction that I didn't think should go there. Let me go fix that. So kind of the things to look at is if you've got balance sheet balances that don't match the bank statement, you need to figure out why. If they're a negative balance account, except for owner draws or contra accounts, like this little discount's given, that's a contra account. It should be negative. The others should not. If your accounts payable and doesn't match the bills you know you owe, or your accounts receivable doesn't match the invoices you know are owed to you, then go look and find out why. If you're using software, you want to look at, especially QuickBooks Online has a particular account that trips everybody up. It's called undeposited funds. If your undeposited funds isn't correct, find out why, or you will be crying at the end of the year, and I will be crying with you. So know your software. There will be certain accounts the software uses that are built in. You can't delete them, and it points certain transactions to that. Know your software and check those accounts. And then the other thing is there's a thing called a P&L detail that you can pull out of software. So if you're using your software, you pull up your P&L detail for the year or for the month, you should be able to roll right down it and see the details of the transactions. You'll roll down and it will say like auto, gasoline, and then you see Chevron, Shell, and then you see auto insurance, whatever, and telephone, Verizon. A 5-minute scroll down that report, if you see something out of place, it will probably jump out. And so that's another good thing you can do, just to check your work. Because the more you can fix a problem right away, the more it's simple to fix. And the more you wait, the more it's a misery. And that's it. That's 10-ish ways to simplify your small business bookkeeping. So, any questions?
Do you use QuickBooks, Lura, or do you use another system?
I use primarily QuickBooks because they have the best automation thus far. There are 2 contenders that I'm waiting. In fact, I've talked to them. I put in suggestions. I'm waiting for them to come up because I would love to be able to walk away from QuickBooks. But I use QuickBooks Desktop and I use QuickBooks Online. And then sometimes for my very small business accounts, we'll use Wave because Wave is a lot more cost effective for them and is a pretty solid piece of software for a really small business.
That being WAVE, Wave, or?
I think I think it's just WAVE. Yeah, I can look for it if you want me to.
That's okay. I'm stuck in QuickBooks, so I probably won't change.
Yeah, it is hard to change the habits and learn a new one. I know what you mean. It took me a while when they first came out with online to be willing. I was like, oh, but now I love it. So.
Well, I do 8 different accounts on it, so it's kind of crazy.
Do you use desktop or do you use the online product?
I've been using the desktop, but I'm really frustrated with it right now because I can't find things, and so I'm asking a friend of mine who's been trained, because I've just learned it on my own. Anyway, I'm asking her to give me an hour, or that I'll pay her for an hour next week so I can figure out what's going on.
Yeah, sure. That can be a very good thing to do if you're stuck. You know, if something has gone awry, pay somebody who knows how to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Rashida, good to see you.
Oh, who said that? I couldn't see.
Oh, it was me.
Oh, Nancy. Hi, Nancy. You too.
I'm going to stop this share.
Yeah, I wrote down a whole page of questions.
Good.
I've had over the lifetime I've had 4 bookkeepers. Every one of them has messed up my books that I have to go to my accountant and get them fixed again. Why do some businesses have so much trouble with bookkeepers and others have such great success? I mean, it was a total mess, and it took me hours and hours and hours to fix it.
That is an interesting question that you are not alone in that. And in fact, myself and my colleague, in trying to hire a bookkeeper to help us out as we got busier and busier, we went through 4. So we now have somebody good. It's harder than you might think to find somebody who knows bookkeeping for small businesses because they need to be a full charge bookkeeper. They need to understand how all of this works. A lot of people think they're a bookkeeper, but they work, say, in a corporation just on one portion of it. Maybe they were in the AR department. And I have cleaned up a lot of messes that were made by bookkeepers. There's like no question in my mind. What I would suggest, if you're looking for a good bookkeeper, and for some reason you don't think I'm just the most awesome, but what I always tell people is you talk to your CPAs. CPAs know who's a good bookkeeper, and they know when you have a situation where a bookkeeper is kind of falling apart for some reason. I just took over a set of books earlier this year from a bookkeeper. She was a great bookkeeper for years. I don't know what happened. I don't know her personally, but she's a great bookkeeper for years. She'd served the client well for years. Maybe she has a health problem or something. She stopped being able to do that, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. Finally, it came to me, and and I'm taking care of it now. But see, when I talked to the CPA, she knew that. I said, well, it sounds like recently, and the CPA is like, no, that was 2 or 3 years ago that started. So your CPA can really tell you. And they can.
The CPA has said that he wants to do a class for bookkeepers, So, yeah.
Yeah. That's part of why I want to start teaching it. I really didn't realize until I started working with Toki, who's also a good bookkeeper, and then we started to try to find someone. I didn't realize that very few people really understand how to do this well. I mean, it was kind of enlightening to me about the value of what I know. It was kind of a little boost to the ego. I'm like, wow, and that's why I want to do some training. I see an awful lot of people, especially since COVID started, a lot of people are told that bookkeeping is the easiest job in the world, easiest business to start. You don't need to know anything. That isn't true at all. I went to college and did the accounting theory courses. I had a gentleman I worked with. He was an accountant. He mentored me for 3 years, and he was picky. He was not like he could find any mistake. He was one of those people that just had that head for numbers, and he would say, "Oh, in that $1,342.16 transaction," he'd be like, "That's $8,000 off," and I'd be like, "No, it's not." "Yes, it is. It's $8,000 off. Go back and look." And I would go back, and it would always be $8,000 off. And so I spent 3 years working with him, plus my college time, plus years now learning. And so you do want to beware of people who don't have a good sense of that.
Well, that's why I started doing my own books again. I still don't understand most of the reports. And what really baffles me as a small business owner is I go see my accountant and I think I'm losing money. I come out of the accountant's office. I haven't billed anybody, haven't done anything, and now I'm making money. It's accounting is weird because I didn't do anything and I started making money.
You must have worked. Come on now, Sheldon.
Does she know about the Pancake Machine?
You can actually
know
offer
about the
classes.
Pancake Machine, because I definitely would move some things around in the books in a positive way for the Pancake Machine thing. It could be that.
Sheldon, if you can make more money by not doing anything, you have a skill that you can teach indefinitely.
Yeah.
You gotta start doing less.
Yeah, there we go. That's the best idea. Yeah. I mean, he just moved a few numbers around and all of a sudden I was making money.
Right.
I mean,
were the numbers in the wrong place?
And I've been in business for 20 years and that totally blew my mind. He just moved a few things around and said, "Oh, no, you're making money. You're not losing it." And, so I just don't understand reports. And yeah, I look at the profit and loss. I look at all of that, but I don't know what it means. Yeah. So the other question is, do you help people? I have my first PPE forgiveness paperwork is due. I look at that. It's due next month. I look at that. My eyes glaze over. I shut it and say, tomorrow I'm going to work on it.
How much was yours one of the smaller loans that has
$9,000?
We go through the new SBA Portal. That's 10 minutes. We can do that.
Well,
there's an SBA Portal. We go in, we gather the information, you put it in. I can guide you through it.
How do you price your services, time and materials?
Depends. For some things, it doesn't make sense. For people who hire me and I'm doing a set piece of work every month, there's a package price. That way they know what it's going to be. And that package price builds in the fact that towards the end of the year, there's going to be more hours as we get 1099s out and get things turned over to the accountant, right? I look at what's the year going to cost. I divide it by 12. That's your monthly package price, and we just roll along. In part because that allows me to automate sending your bill, and you can automate your payment, and that's one less thing we have to worry about. For some things, it doesn't make any sense to do that, So for my guy who calls me twice a year and he goes, "Oh yeah, run the reconciliations," I just keep my track of my time and I send him a bill at the end, Or I have sometimes people they'll just want consult time once in a while where they can hire me. So we just do a time and materials, and then maybe they have a complex transaction and they'll say, "Can I get an hour of your time, this week?" And we'll set it up and get it done. We use screen share and make it happen, because that's a really effective thing for small, DIY bookkeeper businesses to do.
Do you work with the accountant, with our accountant then?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, especially at tax time, but sometimes through the year, if we have something like, I had one client was going to go and apply for a line of credit, and this was last month. And so he was asking for the financials, and he had some questions, and the accountant and I worked together. I like accountants. They like me. They send me business. They're good people.
Well, I may need to do your help with the PPE because that needs to get done.
Sure.
And
sure.
And then I have the second PPE, which, like I said, my eyes just glaze over when I look at the form, and I don't want to look at it anymore. I figure tomorrow it'll still be there.
The new portal is great, and you don't need most of what's on that form. You just need the basic information, and we sign in and put in the information. It's been great. The first time around, we had that simplified form. It wasn't too bad. This time, I'm like, nice. Click, click, click. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, email me sometimes.
Okie doke.
So I'm kind of getting gathering just from a general perspective, the personal characteristic of being procrastinator is not a good thing.
It's not if you want simple books. If you don't mind complicated and being really frustrated and upset and feeling sort of desperate late in the tax year, it's fine.
Well, it does add a certain amount of excitement to it all.
It's a totally legitimate thing to do if that's the way you like. But you guys didn't say, "Tell me how to do bookkeeping so I can get heartburn." You said, "How can I simplify this?" Makes me miserable.
It's easy to get heartburn, so.
Yep. Well, that was really very interesting, and I was happy to hear that I'm doing most of those things that you said, even though I did my own books for 50 years, and now the last 10 have been doing them for somebody else. And anyway, so it made me feel like, but I'm not good at QuickBooks. I mean, I was good at what I was doing before, but it was a program called, it was from Georgia. What was
Peachtree?
it? Peachtree, yes. Well, Peachtree hadn't been had any updates since '95, and I started getting really nervous that one day I was going to open it up and it'd be gone, and the last 10, 15 years would be history, and I would be. So anyway, that's when we moved to QuickBooks, and I'm not really as, I need to spend the $450 for the class, I think, but.
So what is the status on Peachtree?
I don't know if it's around at all.
No, it's not. They weren't, I used that, he'd used that program for like, well, it's been almost 20 years. Actually, I started working for him in 92. And Peachtree had been around for a while after that, before that. And then like I said, they just stopped. Was it 2005 or was it 95? Anyway, it was really a lot of years that they
It's
weren't
been a
doing,
long time.
they weren't doing any updating on it. And that's when I
Yeah.
started getting scared.
They're very much like WordPerfect with Microsoft Word. The better marketing arm or a company won out.
Mm-hmm.
Peachtree is a really good accounting program, but
Yeah.
they just didn't have the marketing savvy to. Oracle is now kind of pushing that envelope though to get back into the small business time frame.
That would be good.
Have you
Wouldn't
worked with the
Yeah.
Oracle product at all yet?
I haven't used it at all, but I know people who do and speak highly of it. And then, Patriot, they're making a run for QuickBooks Money.
Yeah.
And there's Xero. Xero works a little bit differently. It looks like it could be reasonably solid, but they have a couple of things they need to turn on before bookkeepers are going to go over there. Because we probably won't go back in time from our automation.
Yeah, the first
What
time
about Mint? Is Mint in the running?
Mint is used more for personal bookkeeping. Have they been putting together a small business option?
I don't know. I just see their advertising as well. Oh, well, what's his name just bought it? Ryan Reynolds just bought Mint.
Oh,
Well, it's going to take off then.
Yeah.
That man does not go into unsuccessful endeavors.
Yeah, no, he does not.
He owns
it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Gin here in Portland.
He what?
He owns Aviation Gin here in Portland.
No, he sold that.
Did he really?
Yep.
When did he do that?
Within the last year.
Oh, wow. That's why he's not replying to my emails, I guess.
So I have a question for you guys. And so Sheldon has given me one of the answers. Other things you want to learn about, what the reports mean. That's very good. What other things about bookkeeping do you want to learn about?
Well, for me, another thing would be, how can I use my books to set my pricing? So, for my pancake business, I set my pricing. I have a spreadsheet here. Well, lately I haven't because it's too depressing, but I put in all my costs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I add a little bit, and then I look at what market will bear and set my product pricing that way.
Mm-hmm.
How to set pricing based on your QuickBooks data.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm working up other things to talk about and things that small business owners would like to know about, because we want to put out a set of instructional videos, and so I've been out interviewing small business owners to see where are their pain points, what do they want to learn about. I don't want to teach them. I don't want to be teaching something they don't care about. So
I have a question.
Go ahead, Becky.
I don't know if you can help me, but I use Quicken, an old version of Quicken, because it works for me on my old Mac. That's made for home use, I think. And it's not, I'm not connected to the bank or anything, but I use the autofill and run reports with it. I set up an account for this condominium association that I recently formed. And the income and expenses are relatively simple because it's just 2 units. And we're not putting money away for reserves. But we are putting, we each are doing an automatic deposit of our HOA fees. And then I want to be able to take those and break them down by category because they're based on, this much for landscaping, this much for insurance and, garbage handling, whatever. So I want to take each of those amounts every month and break it out to know how much it has been, how much we have in each of those sub accounts. So I don't know if that's something that I set up on Quicken or whether I do that like in a spreadsheet or something. How would you approach that?
Well, I would look to, if you're not attached to the bank, except, well, that part doesn't really matter. If you're not, I would set up, generally speaking, either a journal entry, if Quicken can do that. It's been a long time since I worked in Quicken, so I don't really remember. I would set up a journal entry and I would memorize it so that each month I could put it in, and I would have things broken down, right, by the percentages. And if that doesn't work, you can often put in a bill, and then when the deposit comes through, you use it to pay the bill and use the bill to break down those. So just look at the software and see what the options are, but it'll either be a journal entry or a bill. And so if you need any help looking at that, let me know because I can usually find answers to that. Oh, you're on mute.
So break down the deposit itself. I mean, the money, the figure that, you can do sub amounts. Is that what you're suggesting for each transaction?
Yes.
Break it down
Yeah,
into
so
categories?
Yeah, so I would have a journal entry that's putting the money, the total amount into the bank, and then allocating it out to whatever, repairs, garbage, utilities, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I would memorize it. So every month I'm pulling it up. If the amounts are the same all the time, but I'm guessing they're not because of utilities and stuff like that, I would just make it a memorized transaction. It would be either a journal entry or it'll be a bill. And then I would pull it up every month, put the correct numbers in, hit enter. If you have to use a bill, have the deposit be the bill payment in your software.
Okay.
It's pretty fast if you can do a memorized transaction.
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you recommend using the profit first method?
I actually started using that a couple of years ago when my colleague went to, she went to a convention with it. She went to one of his workshops, for several days. And I liked, she sent me the book, the workbook. She talked to me about it and I read through it. The book probably could have been said in about a third that number of pages. But I liked very much the philosophy behind it. And I was like, well, because, I like simple. I named my business Easy E-Office because I try to make it simpler. Let's not complicate, right? So I sat down and looked at what are the key things that I need to take out of this. I've been using it ever since, and I saved a lot more in my business in terms of profit this year, and it didn't really hurt me because of those the matrices he has. But I didn't set up the 5 accounts. I saw that, and I'm like, he has no idea what he's starting. He's blowing up a bomb in small businesses, and besides which, the bank is going to hate you. What I did, because I have bookkeeping software, was you can just do a sub account. You can say this is the amount, this amount is put in there for the profit. This amount is saved in there for the taxes, right? I mean, maybe he doesn't have bookkeeping software, and that's why he didn't realize. But no, what he wants is that people can open up that banking app and they can see immediately. I wasn't willing to go to all that trouble, and I can open up my QuickBooks. So I did an adapted version of it, and I have a really good spreadsheet for going in, figuring out my income, my COGS for the month and everything else, and then figuring out how much I need to transfer. I have a good spreadsheet. Yeah, call me. We'll talk about profit first. I'm so proud of what I've done since I started doing that. It wasn't that much more to sock away. And got a nice savings account over there.
Thank you.
Well, Laura, getting back to your question about topics, I think if you expand a little bit more on what you talked about earlier in the reports that can help somebody make their business better. You kind of touched on that,
I like that.
at the beginning of your conversation, and why bookkeeping is so much fun, right?
Right.
So yeah, I would just use that as a tangent and say, well, you know, this is where we talk about bookkeeping being fun, and this is why, and this is how you do it.
I really like that. That's really useful to me on the reports, and it's the part that I liked the most when I learned bookkeeping. Once somebody started showing me the managerial stuff, I was like, this is fun. This is really fun. Now we're having a grand story problem about this business and what it should do. So yeah, that's a little nerdy, I know.
A little warped, but that's what we like you.
I know.
Yeah, my bookkeeping is, you know, at the end of the month, I look at how much money I have in the bank. I make a mental note of how many events I'm going to have that month. And then I make a mental note of how much I need to buy, and then I know whether I'm making money or not.
I think a lot of small businesses do that. They do it sort of in the way we do our personal cash flow, right? We look to see what's in the checking account, how many bills do we have, how long does it have to last, and, you know, do the kids need new shoes this month? And then do we then have enough money to go out to dinner? But in a business, what's in your checking account minus the expenses that you're going to have does not tell you if you are making money. In a business, the amount coming in is your gross profit. That minus your cost of goods or cost of services minus your expenses tells you if you are making any money. And when you start looking at it that way, when you learn how to read your profit and loss, you'll start to see trends. I've taught some business owners how to do this, and like as they look at it month after month, they begin to realize what it should look like and what they want the numbers to start doing, and they begin to see how to make decisions with it. And it's really powerful for them. And it is actually fun. You know, sometimes I get to hand somebody their profit and loss that shows them compared to last year, and they see income has gone up like by 48%. So suddenly they know their marketing is working. And then they look and they see their expenses are down by 26%. So they're not being so wasteful, and so their profit is higher. It feels good. So I will work up something on reports.
I think a lot of business owners are scared to make decisions based on the accounting stuff because they don't know what it means. I mean, I know I'm, you know, I don't make decisions based on my accounting. I make decisions. Okay, you know, there's this trend. There's this new barbecue grill that I'm pretty sure I can make money with. I'm going to go buy it. And there's nothing to do with what's in my books. I mean, yes, I have money. I know I have money in my account to buy it. I don't have any big expenses coming up. And I've had some really big events this last month, and I have a few more coming up, so I know it's not going to sink me. You know, I don't make it, you know, make the decision based on the bookkeeping. I think a lot of business owners are scared to make the decision on what's in their books.
I think that's true. I think a lot of times that's warranted because their books aren't accurate. And I think that not all decisions you don't have to look at your finance. I don't make great swaths of my decisions either based on my financial reports. Where I think it makes a tremendous difference is when you're starting to plan and set your goals. And then when you're looking at, is what I'm doing working? Am I headed towards my goal, or am I accidentally headed away from my goal? So, there are some decisions that it's not going to matter. My printer aged out 2 months ago. It works fine. They don't make the drum for it anymore. So anyway, it aged out. I have to have a printer. There was called up Best Buy and have them deliver, right? But when I'm looking at stuff like how much of a dividend am I going to pay myself, or I'd really like to invest in the video training classes. When I looked at doing that, I was like, well, I could do it the old way, which is where Lura thinks she'll just somehow figure out how to do all these pieces and parts. Then that makes me have heartburn, and I can't. So I sat down and I looked at my books, and I found where that money was, and I was able to know that I can do this. I can hire somebody to help with the video stuff, and I can hire somebody to help with the parts of the web back office. And I know how many of those videos I can make until I have to make more money so that they're paying for themselves. It's in those kinds of planning, right? Mm-hmm. And it can be really powerful. And I wouldn't have realized I had the money to do that. I would probably be trying to pick through that myself, except I had really gotten onto, starting when I started doing the Profit First stuff and using their benchmarks, I had put a lot more than I thought away in the business that I hadn't used for expenses. So I sat down and I looked, and there was the money. Go figure.
That's cool.
So
it's like Sheldon said, the less you do, the more you make.
That's the plan I want to be on. For the less I do, the more I make. I think people should just send me a check just for.
Hey, I was the one that came up with that. I should get the check.
We'll share the check. We'll share the check, but you have to make the pancakes.
Okay.
All boats rise. Along your ideas there, Lura, one of the things I found just in studying a lot of business and getting involved with home businesses and stuff, a lot of people with home businesses start off as a hobby, or something they're just really interested in. Most people at the brick and mortar, they're there because, well, I had to have a job, and this is what my dad did, or this is what my mom did, or where I got my college degree in. A lot of home business owners, small business owners are in it because they're really interested in what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so, and so they take their finances and stuff, and it's a migration from how I ran this as a hobby to how do I run it for profit. Mm-hmm. So, some kind of like a series of hobby to profit would be.
I like it.
Kind of grabbing people's interest from how they got there to where they want to go.
I like it.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Good. Any other thoughts or any other things that people would like to, any other suggestions you guys have for me in terms of things about bookkeeping that really confuse you that you wouldn't mind learning more about? And keep in mind, in some future presentation I do here, I'll be testing it out on you guys, because even this was me looking at some material that I could develop out there.
One thing I think would be the things that aren't just the money that comes in and the money that goes out, the debts. Mm-hmm. Like if you have a loan on something and where it should be in your system, where you're, just that section of above expenses and income. whatever that's called.
Sort of classification of assets and liabilities.
Exactly. And like if you have a property, how much you are supposed to be taking off in every year.
For depreciation.
Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of for that next stage of small business.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, it's okay to do some, pretty straight cash bookkeeping when you're pretty small. But as you start to get loans, you should introduce a balance sheet to your situation.
Oh, the other one is if you are a home office and the percentage, like my home office at one point, it was one whole room and it was 16.5% of the square footage of the house. And so that was what I could charge of the water bill and the heating bill and all that kind of stuff. That's another piece of information for the home business person.
I would be interested in learning how to use the cash flow as a tool, mostly for like making things more predictable, but also say if you're, like in Sheldon's situation where you're basically buying supplies ahead of time and you're kind of underwriting a portion of your sales before you can collect, just managing that. And then the other would be forecasting and using your budget more strategically.
Okay.
And chart of accounts too. I'd be interested in that.
Okay.
I suspect
Cut your whole season out for you, Lura.
I suspect that this has something to do with the reconciliation you were talking about. But one of the puzzling things I've always encountered with balance sheets is how you're working really hard to have everything come out to zero. that just has never.
That has to do with algebra. That has to do with algebra. Because of the accounting formula, assets equal liabilities plus equity.
Yeah, so
and the formula has to be balanced on both sides. And y'all think you didn't use algebra after high school. You do. But that's why that is. But you know what the powerful thing about the balance sheet is? I tell my clients this, they're often surprised. A lot of people don't realize this. So when you look at the balance sheet and you look down and you see the equity line, the deal is if you died today and we sold everything and we paid off all the bills you had, that's the amount that I would hand to your spouse.
And we want it to be zero, right? I mean, is that what we're going for here?
No. Nope. More equity, the better.
But I've always thought, I look at a balance sheet and everything comes right down to zero, and I'm thinking this is not a successful business.
Yeah, that's the algebra part. But good job making a math joke, Eric. It's not everybody who can do that.
That's right. The insult of chasing zero when you're in business.
Yeah.
Well, that's a nice segue into Robin position with and in the mental position of how to get to profit. Because I think Eric's, to some extent right in that a lot of people look at it and say, why am I working towards zero?
I think that also, it's one of the things that for me that I find that because I do know how to read my financials and I can see things in the patterns, it can be really helpful to me at times when I'm feeling like nothing's really working. I'm not that good at this. Nothing's ever changing. I'm still broke. But then when I take a look, I almost always find out you're not doing nearly as bad as you think. You get that in your mind. You get tired working for yourself. You get tired of not having, a coffee break. You get kind of down. You're working on something that's difficult, and it colors what you see. But if you look at data, as long as the data is correct, the data won't lie to you. It will tell you the truth.
Oh, I thought of another one that was always confusing to me. when you book something under cost of goods sold, we used to put our design contractor in that area, but our
Cost of services.
editorial contractor went down under the, other line items as professional services. And I could never really understand why one would be part of, above the line and the other below the line.
So the easiest way to kind of think about that is, if the subcontractor can be very clearly assigned to a particular project. So they're a web designer and they worked on this website, abc.com. That is cost of services. But if you have a person doing something else, maybe they're your social media person for your business, right? Their work cannot be easily assigned just to one project. They are expensive, so they're below the line.
Okay.
So you'll see that, for instance, in construction, where the crew and the subcontractors will all be above the line because it's easy to say that plumber worked at that project, this crew member worked over there. But the owner of the company who's supervising it all, we can't say what he was working on at any given minute, probably 3 things. He's below the line.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Good.
Another fabulous hour with Lura.
Yes. Indeed.
Well, thank you, everybody. This is a really good opportunity to start looking at this piece of material. I already have loads of ideas about how I can make it even better, and I really like the ideas that I got tonight for the questions that you have. And, I'm around if you have questions, or, you're working on something sticky, give me a call. I can probably help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you. It's good seeing you, Rashida. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything for the future, for the goodness of the order? Or?
Well, I guess we can remind people what we're going to have next month.
Well, I'll let that Rob speak for himself.
We're talking more money.
Carrying on the theme.
We're going to get into the psychological aspect of money.
All right.
Theme of enrichment.
We don't want to go to zero. Don't want to go to zero.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
Fabulous. Okay. Well.
Good show.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you in a month.
Great job, Laura.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Laura. Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Night.
Go to bed.
I am. I have to. I'm ready for that pillow ban. I got things to do tomorrow. All right, you guys have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Take care, guys.